Howdy folks, and thanks for being here with me today. Today's point of discussion is going to be fall pruning. So let's jump right in. Today we will be discussing the benefits of pruning, 3 of the main techniques, thinning, heading, and regenerative, plus additional tips and tricks so that you can cultivate beauty and growth in your landscape. There are many benefits to pruning. It can help you maintain the form and growth of your plant, improves the aesthetic and health of the plant, and can also encourage an increase in yield or bloom. More specifically, how does pruning enhance the growth of your plant, prevent disease, and improve the aesthetic? Pruning encourages healthy new growth, which is often more vigorous and productive than old growth. It improves the aesthetic by shaping your plant, making your garden more visually appealing. It prevents disease. Removing dead or diseased branches helps prevent the spread of infection. And it can increase the yield. Pruning fruit trees and shrubs can lead to a larger and higher quality harvest. The big question is, when do I prune? Generally speaking, there's a spring and a fall prune, but people often are confused as to what their plant would prefer, a fall or a spring prune. Really what we're looking at here when we're asking ourselves whether our plant would prefer a spring or a fall prune is, does the plant prefer to bloom on old or new growth? So understanding the difference between old and new growth is crucial for effective pruning. So what is old growth versus new growth? It's in the names. Old growth is that woody, more established shrub material, whereas new growth has that soft, springy, fresh green look to it. The distinction is old growth versus new growth in the names. My mom's often asking me, when do I prune this? What season do I prune this? When should I prune my hydrangeas? And the answer is generally, well, it depends. Depends on the plant specifically. Just in the hydrangea family alone, you have variety. For example, the oak leaf hydrangea, which is commonly a more sun-tolerant hydrangea, it has a white bloom. They prefer to be pruned on old, or they prefer to bloom on old growth, versus a smooth hydrangea, which is your more typical pink purple hydrangea. It's a little more shade preferring. The alkaline and acidity of the soil can affect the coloration of the plant. They prefer to bloom on new growth, which would mean you would be pruning your oak leaf hydrangea right after the bloom and your smooth hydrangea early spring. We'll go over that again to kind of break it down. To summarize, the oak leaf hydrangea prefers to bloom on old growth. So you would want to prune it right after the bloom, late summer or fall. It would be considered a fall prune. Versus smooth leaf or smooth hydrangea prefers to bloom on new growth. So you would want to prune early spring before the bloom. Kind of a trick though, or a cheat if you will, is a good rule of thumb is if it's a spring bloom, then it would be a spring prune. If it's a fall bloom, then a fall prune. Most plants prefer to be pruned after their bloom. But you can always research the specific plant if you have any questions before pruning. So now let's go over thinning, heading, and regenerative pruning. Thinning pruning involves selectively removing entire branches or stems to increase airflow and sunlight penetration. The benefits to thinning would be reduce overcrowding, enhance nutrient distribution, and it prevents disease by allowing better air circulation. Heading pruning would be defined as cutting back the tips of branches typically a bud or lateral branch. This stimulates bushier and more compact growth. The benefits to heading pruning would be shaping the plants, encouraging branching, and controlling their size. Regenerative pruning involves cutting a plant back quite severely to rejuvenate it. So what you're doing here is it's often an overgrown or neglected plant, and you're cutting it all the way back to its source in an attempt to start over kind of from square one. The benefits for regenerative pruning would be to bring new life to the plant. It's overgrown, it's not aesthetically appealing in the landscape anymore, and so you're just trying to give it a second chance. A good rule of thumb, though, when pruning is the 1/3 rule. And what this means is you can take up to 1/3 of the plant without causing any harm or damage to the plant. So the regenerative pruning is more aggressive than the 1/3 rule. So you might want to get an expert involved before you go the regenerative route. But generally speaking, a homeowner is always safe to take up to 1/3 of the plant without causing any damage. So pruning gives you control of your landscape. It helps you control the growth and the form of your plants, improves the health and beauty of them, and it allows you to control the development of your landscape when it comes to creating space and form, the sense of canopy and enclosure. So growth pattern is very important when it comes to the more intricate natures of landscape design and the unconscious that landscape design has on the user when they're using their landscape. And so we'll get more into landscape design principles as we get further along in our series and have a better understanding of our organic materials, because that's where it starts. Understanding our organic materials and how they work in the landscape, and then we can manipulate our organic materials to create form and space and use color and texture to create atmosphere and environment. So stick with us. We are happy you are enjoying the series. Tune in for next time to discuss more on our fall prep. We'll be going over winter watering and irrigation.